Taming the Rainbow by Soren 2013. Warning: this fic contains hardcore bondage and questionable consent.
Rainbow Dash! Rainbow Dash! Rainbow Dash!
The crowd cheered. Rainbow Dash had just caught a balcony that had collapsed when an elderly pony added his weight with the other elderly ponies. She was hovering in midair, doing a victory dance. She was oblivious to the obnoxious show she was putting on for herself. Twilight and the rest of the gang walked up to the edge of the crowd. "Call me silly, but I think this whole hero thing might be going to Rainbow Dash's head," Twilight said, a little worried. "You might be right, silly," Pinkie Pie chimed in. Twilight just looked at her, annoyed. Just then, Scootaloo rolled up on her scooter. She marveled at her idol.
"There just aren't enough words in the dictionary to describe Rainbow's awesomeness,"
she squealed giddily. Twilight leaned over to Applejack and whispered,
"I can think of a few new words."
"And I bet Modest ain't one of 'em," AJ completed Twilight's thought.
"No, but she is kind of awesome. She'd be even more so if she wasn't so high-minded, though.
Hey, Twi, I've got a few, errands I need to run. I'll catch y'all later, okay?" Applejack called back as she trotted away. She had a deep, dark secret she hoped no pony would ever know. If her family found out, they would probably disown her. But seeing Dash in her boastful state made her determined to break that spirit. Dash had been the only pony Applejack had eyes for, but she was nervous at what she would think. Now she didn't care. She was going to get what she wanted.
And then I zoomed into the well. I knew it would be dark and dangerous, but I didn't let that stop me. Danger's my middle name. Rainbow Danger Dash. Thinking back on that day, I acted pretty awesomely heroic that day."
Rainbow Dash had recited this whole hero speech for most of the last night. She wanted to keep her heroic stature up, so she decided what better way to do that than a speech. And here in Sugar Cube Corner, it was the best spot, since ponies were always coming in and out to buy Pinkie's delicious cupcakes. However, outside of the crowd, she didn't inspire awe and inspiration. Rather, she influenced annoyance.
"Awesomely heroic that day, awesomely arrogant ever since,"
Applejack muttered, only loud enough to where Twilight and Pinkie could hear her, and they both vocalized agreement.
"I can't take this anymore. I'll see y'all later."
And with that, the orange earth pony walked out. Twilight noticed Spike in his reporter's uniform, holding a notepad and pencil.
Spike, are you taking notes?"
she inquired.
"Yeah," he answered. "I've been hoof-picked by Rainbow Dash herself to write her autobiography."
Twilight shot Rainbow a glare.
"Autobiographies are supposed to be written by the ponies they're about. Maybe for normal run-of-the-mill ponies, but I'm far too busy to stop and write. That's why I hired Spike here as my ghostwriter,"
Dash countered. At this, Pinkie's hair stood on end.
"Ah! Spike's a ghost,"
she screamed and then vanished out of the door.
"Anyway," the Pegasus continued, "it takes guts for a pony to do what I can do. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some lives to save."
In the next moment, she was gone, leaving a rainbow trail leading out the window. Twilight and Pinkie just rolled their eyes and decided to move on. Rainbow Dash was beyond annoyed. The whole day passed without a single accident.
"How am I going to keep up my heroic stature if there's nothing to do?" she thought. "Oh well, I have tomorrow."
She was just flying over Sweet Apple Acres on her normal route home when she felt a pinprick of pain on her flank. She stopped abruptly into a hover. She looked at her flank and saw a syringe-like dart. She pulled it out with both hooves and threw it away. She suddenly felt exhausted and was losing all control of her wings. Her wings went limp and she plummeted towards the ground. The last thing she saw before slipping into unconsciousness was the silhouette of a pony, quickly dragging a net behind her to break her fall. When she came to, it was pitch black. Her eyes sought out any source of light that was not there. When she tried to move, she found out that her upper body was bound with rope, making her front leg and wing movement impossible. She slowly stood up on her hind legs, careful not to make any noise. She remembered falling out of the sky because a dart was shot at her. She was kidnapped. Slowly she took a step, then another. On the third step there was nothing but empty space. She was falling again. Briefly, however. She landed face first on a dirt floor. She moaned in pain, but there was something muffling her attempt at vocalizing. She tried to stick her tongue out, only to be stopped by a flexible barrier, duct tape. Nervous and on the verge of panicking, she tried desperately to get up, but in that moment of struggle, she kicked something and the sound of shattering glass froze the Pegasus with fear. Moments later, she heard the clop of hooves on wood above. Was her captor going to kill her? This question screamed in Dash's brain, causing the panic to surface. She started to hyperventilate when the sound of an opening door made her hold her breath. The door then closed. Suddenly a light bulb came to life and revealed the whole room. It was a small basement with a dirt floor and a table in the middle of the room. But the details of the room went unnoticed to Rainbow because standing before her was Applejack herself. Dash mumbled. Applejack looked different. Her mane was down and frizzy. Her tail was in the same condition. Her walk was different as well. She moved with somewhat of a seductive sway. Rainbow looked at Applejack in shock. Rainbow, you been getting awfully high-minded. Practically, I'm tired of it. Applejack spoke. Even her voice was different. It's deep and dark. I always had a thing for you, though. I keep thinking about you almost every day. Applejack walked up to the confused Pegasus, grabbed the ropes binding her, and hoisted her back onto the table. I'm going to enjoy breaking that proud spirit of yours, Applejack whispered in Dash's ear, sending a chill down her spine. Applejack leaned in and gave the cyan-colored ear a tentative lick. The sudden wetness and the warmth from the foreign organ made Dash gasp, then moan. Her ear twitched erratically from the warm breath of the earth pony. Dash felt something on her hind legs. She looked down and her eyes went wide. On both her hind legs was something that resembled miniature belts, with small devices attached to them, but that wasn't the scary part. The devices had some sort of wire system that ran up her thigh into her vagina. Oh, we'll get to that later. For now, I want to savor this, Applejack said seductively. In one swift motion, she grabbed the tape with her teeth and ripped it away. Ow! Dash yelped, but before she could get another word out, another pair of lips smashed into her own. At first she was shocked, but she soon melted in the embrace and began to kiss back. Applejack crawled onto the table over Dash and caressed her face as they kissed. Dash's thoughts were all hazy, and she couldn't think straight. Something told her that this was wrong, and it had to stop, but something else told her that this felt so good it had to be right. By now she was kissing Applejack with equal aggressiveness, and she was surprised when she felt Applejack's tongue rubbing against her teeth. Hesitantly, she opened her mouth, and the earth mare's tongue shot in and began to explore the wet cave. Dash felt pleasure she had never felt before and found herself wanting more. She began to wrestle back AJ's tongue with her own until they were twisting around each other in the middle. They were both moaning into each other's mouths as they did so. As they lathered their tongues together, Rainbow tried her best, since her front legs were bound, to push her head up to get as much of Applejack's mouth in her own as she could. Eventually, AJ gave out and Dash pushed her tongue past the other. This lasted for several minutes until Applejack pulled back and broke the kiss, leaving a long, thick strand of saliva still connecting them. Both ponies licked their lips. They were panting from the exertion of energy being spent from the aggressive passion. Dash was about to speak when Applejack slapped the duct tape back on her mouth.
Well, that was pretty fun. Now, for the real deal,
Applejack announced. She pulled Dash up to a sitting position. She then raised her hoof and placed it on Rainbow's chest. They both looked into each other's eyes. AJ's hoof then slowly trailed down over her chest, to her stomach, and then over to the inside of Dash's thighs.
You ready, Sugar Cube?
AJ asked. Without waiting for an answer, she pressed a button on the side of the device. Rainbow's eyes immediately went wide, and she elicited a muffled scream. This pleasure she felt was unlike anything she had ever felt, compared to the adrenaline rush of flying. The devices were sending intense vibrations through the wire, and it felt as though she was under a pleasure attack. She grunted and moaned, trying to hold back her incoming climax.
Y'all have way too much energy in you,
Applejack whispered seductively in Dash's ear. Dash started to struggle against the ropes tightly binding her front legs and wings to her body. She began to squirm, wiggling her body in place.
Stop fighting it, Rainbow. Just let it all out.
Rainbow couldn't take any more. The intense waves of pleasure that were coursing through her body, the seductive talk, it was all too much. It turned her on. Her hips began to buck and hump at the vibrations. Dash screamed, and all her muscles tightened up as she came. Thick, clear liquid spurted out of Rainbow's love canal, filling the room with the smell of sweat and musk.
Had a girl,
AJ whispered and kissed Dash's ear. Dash sighed as she basked in the afterglow.
There, that felt good, didn't it?
AJ asked. Dash mumbled.
You're welcome, Sugar Cube.